Monster House. Maybe my absolute favorite movie as a kid. Little did I know at the time, it was actually my first small taste of the horror world. And 20 years later, this movie still holds up. That's right, 20 years ago today, this movie came out in theaters. And it did pretty good for Sony at the box office. I'm surprised we never got a sequel. Honestly, I love this film. It's funny and very enjoyable with a compelling story. But what you may not know is we almost got a completely different version of the film, from entire scenes, character moments, and even entire sequences involving the house were changed or completely removed. And today, I want to go over those changes, using the draft script and concept arts just to see how different this movie almost was. If you've never seen this movie, I suggest you go watch it right now before watching this video. But for those of you who have, let's just do a quick recap of the plot. The movie follows the story of DJ, who feels off about the house across the street, and the old man scaring away anyone who comes near, oftentimes taking possessions that have ended up on his property. The plot kicks off when Nevercracker has a heart attack after confronting DJ, who was trying to get his friend Chowder's basketball back after it ended up on Nevercracker's lawn. And that's when things start to escalate. The two of them start to investigate and quickly realize the house is not only alive, but actively grabbing and consuming anything that goes near the property. They team up with a girl named Jenny after she's attacked and almost eaten by the house. Together, they try to warn others, but no one believes them, so they take matters into their own hands. By the end of the movie, it is revealed the house is actually possessed by Nevercracker's wife, Constance, and the only way to stop it is by destroying the heart of the house, or just blowing it to pieces. But while that's the version of the story we all know, the original draft tells it a little different. Some scenes are darker, some scenes play out different, and some things were moved entirely. So let's go through the movie, and as those moments come up, we'll break down what was originally there and what could have been Monster House. The movie opens with a girl on a bike. She ends up on Nevercracker's lawn. In the final film, this is just a brief setup before the plot kicks off. But in the draft, the house is described differently. It's white, more pristine. Not yet the old brown house we know from the final version of the movie. There's concept art showing this earlier version through DJ's window. And to me, it actually looks like the house in the later flashback sequence. The film continues on. Nevercracker sees DJ watching him. And again, there's concept art showing Nevercracker watching DJ back through a peephole in the door, which is mentioned later in the draft. And remnants remain of this in the final version of the movie when DJ finds binoculars that fold into the peephole.
He was watching me.
From here, the scene plays out mostly the same as the final film, at least up until Chowder arrives. And this is where our first big change comes in. In the draft, compared to the final cut, Chowder shows up at DJ's running from something. Then, two bullies named Ryan and Cameron pull up on their bikes and start egging them, and the banter between them begins. They immediately come off aggressive, throwing insults back and forth, calling DJ High Dive, referencing a childhood incident that we don't get context for until later. And it doesn't stop there. The bullies actually interact with DJ's parents as well. At one point, DJ's dad even mentions to the bullies that DJ's going through puberty, and the bullies end up using that against him later at the pizza place. Once the bullies leave, the scene plays out the same. Chowder's ball ends up on Nevercracker's lawn, but we do note one big difference. After Nevercracker dies, the draft says that the tree roots pull the basketball down into the ground, similar to how the wheel on the gurney was taken by the ground in the final cut. And from there, things remain the same. Z arrives, shows off her unique behavior, and sends DJ to his room. Again, this is where we have another change. In the final version, DJ's nightmare is pretty brief. It's just the shadow of the house casting into his room. A hand reaches from the door to grab him, waking him up. But in the draft, this sequence is much longer and a lot more intense. Instead of just seeing the house from DJ's window, he actually crosses the street and enters Nevercracker's home. We even see the furnace room here for the first time. In the final film, the furnace is mentioned a lot, but is never shown. It was definitely meant to be a much bigger part of the movie, as the final film tells us the heart of the house is what they're after.
You've got to strike at the source of life, the heart.
Whereas in the final cut, it's basically absent. Once DJ wakes up from the nightmare, the draft hits the same beats as the final film. Bones comes in and scares DJ, violates his stuffed animal. DJ calls Chowder, where there's this piece of concept art. But as we get to the point where DJ sneaks out and overhears Z and Bones talking, this is where the draft adds something new. There's a flashback scene here involving Bones and his kite. that Nevercracker took when he was a kid. It gives a bit more backstory to his character, adding context to just how long Nevercracker has terrorized the area. In my hours of research, I did discover there is also a comic related to the movie called Skull and Bones that adds to this flashback. It also shows us a sequence that we almost got in the final film but just have concept art of, suggesting a different fate for Skull. But back to it. The flashback ends. The movie falls back in line with the final version. Z kicks out Bones. He gets lured into the house by the appearance of his kite. DJ heads over to the construction site to meet Chowder. Chowder ding-dong ditches the house, and we see the house come to life for the first time, leading into the introduction of our third main character, Jenny, where she's attacked by the house and rescued by DJ and Chowder. Then, the group meets in DJ's room, where they decide to call the police. Before the cops arrive, I want to mention in the draft, and through a couple pieces of concept art, it appears Officer Lander and Officer Lister's roles were reversed. And there's even a moment in the draft where Lister leans over while he's taking notes. Other than that, the scene plays out normally. The officers arrive, nothing seems out of the ordinary, the officers don't believe the kids, and they leave. Which takes us into an alternate Pizza Freak sequence. In the draft, Ryan and Cameron show up again, and just like before, they're still bullying DJ and Chowder, but this time, Jenny steps in and shuts it down. Asking one of them for a mushroom and olive dish, the bullies respond, "We don't work here," and Jenny responding, "Oh sorry, you just had that 'I'm not going anywhere with my life' look." The bullies back off, and they leave the pizza place. The hero's attention shifts over to Skull, who's in the same place we meet him in the final film. At first, the scene plays out the same. There's added dialogue that mentions one time Skull hung a kid from the ceiling fan for interrupting him while in the game zone. They finally approach, and the dialogue is heavily extended. But one key line was kept, Domus Mactibilis, which means deadly house in Latin. They learn they have to attack the heart of the house, and we realign with the final version of the film. From there, they start to come up with a plan, but the draft does include a few additional moments worth pointing out. It mentions them calculating how much NyQuil they would need to give the house in order to put it to sleep. Then, there's a brief scene where DJ's parents call them, but nothing important comes of it. We line back up as the heroes prepare. Chowder steals medicine from his dad's pharmacy, and they begin to execute their plan. And right after this, we get the answer that explains why DJ is called High Dive earlier on in the draft, and even throughout the draft by the bullies. It's revealed that when they were younger, DJ tried jumping off the highest diving board at summer camp, but he froze, and had to be rescued by the fire department. It was even on the news, Chowder adds. In this scene, we also learn how Chowder got his name, revealing him as the kid that was hung up on the ceiling fan by Skull, leading him to puke all over the pizza joint. They make the vacuum cleaner dummy and they send it towards the house. Then suddenly, the police return. In both versions, the officers are eaten by the house, but it's not as dark in the final film as it is in the draft. It goes even further and shows the badges being spit up next to the squad car, implying their deaths. After this, the kids sit in the car, stunned in silence, as they process what had just happened. Suddenly, there's a tap on the window. It's Z, with her back to the house. The house's tree branches slowly descend towards her, casting a shadow across DJ's face. DJ quickly distracts her by telling her Bones called, and that he was writing a song for her. And what's interesting is, in the director's commentary, they actually mention Z's death.
One of the things that used to happen is Z used to get eaten. That was a scene that was deleted, and that one was really scary because she was talking to the kids when they were trapped inside the cop car, and all of a sudden her hair starts getting pulled back by the branches, and then the tree wraps around her and pulls her in, and the house eats her. It proved really unnecessary in the storyline, and it also was really, really horrific.
But in the draft, she's spared, and in the final movie, completely absent from this sequence. We continue with the final cut as the house eats the car. The kids manage to escape and start exploring the inside of the house. This is where DJ finds Nevercracker's binoculars. From there, they silently move through the house. But don't worry, Chowder has a light step. They fall through the floor and land in the basement with all the toys that have been taken over the years. But this is where the next major change happens. Instead of Nevercracker explaining Constance's backstory later, we see it here. The story is unchanged, just presented through a dust or mist-like vision. After that, their attention shifts to a door with a light coming out of it. This is where the draft really starts to expand on ideas that were completely cut from the final film. As they approach the heart of the house, they get ready to open fire. At the same time, we cut to outside, where for the very last time, we see Ryan and Cameron egging the house. But the house fights back. It attacks them, and they run away in fear. Back inside, they attack the heart. and similar to the final cut, the pipes and springs attack Chowder and Jenny, leaving DJ alone in the basement. However, we see where Chowder ends up, getting transported to Constance's bedroom, landing right on her bed as the bed begins to swallow him. I then believe he lands on the floor, where he sees Constance charging at him in the mirror. Although this isn't in the draft, there is an omitted scene which I believe is connected to this piece of concept art. He runs out of the room, where he is forced by the house over the banister, almost falling into the throat of the house. But before we move on to the final act of the film, I want to address something. I have a theory. Concept art shows pipes running through all the rooms, potentially acting like some kind of muscle system, making the house feel more alive. And this could explain how the house is able to rip itself out of the ground here later and still support itself. In the commentary of the movie, the director mentions they originally wanted a more organic interior.
In the original draft that I read, the interior of the house was actually made up of it was like inner space. It was all, red walls, and the uvula was a real uvula. It was like the house was wood on the outside, but on the inside it was all blood and guts and snot and stuff. I knew that I wanted to try to get that kind of organic life into a real house interior.
Now moving into the final act, the draft begins to pick up where the original film left off. Jenny attacks the uvula, and the heroes are spit out of the house. Once the kids are spat out of the house, the movie continues as usual. And from this point on, the draft largely follows the same structure as the final cut. The group is left outside, dealing with everything that had just happened. DJ gets hit by the ambulance, revealing Nebbercracker as the driver. What the fuck? I have some questions about. Did he just straight up jack an ambulance? There's zero reason he should be driving. He's not getting dropped off. He's actively getting out of the driver's seat. But whatever. Maybe be more believable than nobody noticing a whole house with limbs charging down the street. According to concept art, the little girl from the beginning of the movie known as Eliza is seen watching the house pass her window as her dad is distracted by the TV. Also, can we just appreciate Chowder as a character one last time?
What are you doing? Trying to slow the house down! Move it, partner!
They arrive at the construction site, where Chowder uses an excavator to pull the house down a huge trench, which destroys it, then begins rebuilding itself. And in concept art, you actually see the furnace heart one last time, still glowing. Just like the final version, Chowder then lures the monster house under a crane, where DJ swings across the crane and throws a stick of dynamite into the house, destroying it once and for all. Nebbercracker thanks the kids and exclaims, "They're free."
We're free.
They then return to the house, where they begin to give back all the toys that were taken over the years. Then finally, the mid-credit scenes remain mostly the same, following Z, Skull, and Bones in their short little continuations. And for our final difference from the draft to the final movie, the officers are actually never seen again, implying their deaths after the house attacks. While the final film treats this more lightly, showing them emerge from the rubble after Bones, the draft implies a much darker outcome. And that's the full breakdown of the draft versus the final version of the movie. When you lay it all out, it just becomes clear how many ideas were reshaped, simplified, or completely cut. I know the MPAA made the filmmakers add the ending mid-credit scene showing all the victims emerge from the rubble to avoid a PG-13 rating. And honestly, I can understand why they cut some things, but I feel a darker version would have still been cool to see. Honestly, I still absolutely love this movie either way. Even after weeks of researching and days of putting this video together, there's still plenty of little moments I left out, and I'll link the draft in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. But what do you think? Would you have preferred a darker, more experimental version? Or are you happy with what we got like me? It's still cool to see what could have been,